everybody. Welcome to Bolivia Political Crossroads, episode number 41. Today's Saturday, November 28th, 2020. Morning, Ernesto. How's that coffee?
Oh, pretty good. How are you doing, Paul? Here I am trying to wake up. Still trying to wake up, even though it's 11 in the morning, but I'm still a little sleepy. Yep.
Saturdays are all about.
Yeah, slow.
Yep.
Slow.
Well, a little rundown on what's been going on this week. Okay. First off, we ended the program last week mentioning that there was going to be the first meeting between Evo Morales and Luis Arce, the new president, since he took office. Evo summoned, I think that's the best word, Arce to the meeting, and he went. And I think that there was some symbolic value to that meeting in terms of, a lot of people have been wondering how much of a relationship there was, or how close the two still were. And a lot of people that, at least the people that aren't sympathizers, or if you're not a fan of the MAS, we're hoping that Arce would, try to mark his own course. And I think that meeting, at least, I didn't have any high expectations that he wouldn't go, but it definitely shows that we're not through with Evo Morales yet. That's the way I took that. A few other things worth mentioning. We talked about the 2/3 debate, where the MAS in the legislature decided to eliminate the need for a 2/3 vote, now that they don't have 2/3 anymore, for many important issues, that would generally have needed a 2/3 vote. Before they lost their 2/3 in their last session, they eliminated it. Comunidad Ciudadana, under Carlos Mesa, presented a case before the Supreme Court, arguing that basically that's not fair. And the Supreme Court was very quick in deciding that basically they rejected it. Right. We've got the Inter-American Court of Human Rights back, continuing investigations of the deaths occurred in Sencata and Sacaba in November of last year, just about a year ago. And there's been a bit of controversy or concern that it wouldn't be asking for impartiality on behalf of the team that's come to investigate those, that they also investigate the human rights abuses committed under Evo Morales, or under his leadership, including the deaths in Montero, among others. And so I guess we'll see where that goes. There's sorry, I just lost my place. Probably the largest controversy, or the things that made the most headlines this week, was that there was an effort made, I think, to include. So when there's a presidential transition, there needs to be a coinciding law of officializing that transition, right? And so apparently, before Arce took office on November 8th, there was a law passed from the assembly to the desk of Janine Áñez, then president, to, again, officialize this transition. She didn't sign it. Maybe that was just her way of being a grouch or whatever, giving them the finger, basically. And so Arce has been running the country for the past, basically he ran the country for 2 weeks, technically without the law that officially makes him the president, right? Now, in the meantime, there was an effort, through a document or a letter sent to the assembly, stating that basically that arguing that in this transitional law, they had to include language that would state that there was a coup back in November, committed by fascists, and that needed to be included. You were telling me before we went on, Ernesto, that that wasn't the case, that in the end, it was not included in the writing of the law, which I would take as a relief. It's a silly, our first episode we ever did was whether this was on the question of whether what happened in November was a coup or not. We have differing opinions, but anyway, if I think it's important historically that it's not documented as such. In the arguments that can be made are that there was a 2/3 majority of MAS in the legislature the whole time. The law was, the law was approved and accepted, even in the Supreme Court, that Áñez was a legitimate president, and there was a there was transparent and democratic elections called by the Áñez administration, in which the MAS won with an overwhelming majority. Looking at all that, it's hard to say that. And by the way, Evo Morales resigned. He resigned, and so did everyone in the line of succession, until it got to Áñez. So that's the way I look at it. Another important topic is that in March, we will have local elections. We'll have local elections at a municipal and at a state level. Here they call them departamentos, let's call them states, departments. I don't know what you prefer. But that's coming up in March. It's interesting, obviously, to see what we know based on the national elections is that in urban areas, the MAS usually doesn't have as easy a time winning elections, right? So at a municipal level, it's generally been difficult for them to win elections. Even in El Alto, at least in the last election, the MAS candidate lost, and we have Solvo with a mayor in El Alto. At a state level, it's a mixed bag, right? I think we've seen Oruro, La Paz had a MAS governor, right? It's
the government is from a MAS, and the mayor is from the opposition.
So that's pretty, at least, between the Western states, the MAS is control of most of the governorships. But it's going to be interesting after what's been going on. And I guess we can go into that now. I'll let you take the stage, and we can talk about any of the other topics I mentioned, or about the local elections, wherever you want to go with it.
Okay. Well, really, the issues that you've touched are very interesting, each and one of them. I think the first issue that you touched is, we have talked about this, but it's so interesting that it cannot finish in one conversation ever, and it won't finish in 100 conversations, is who governs Bolivia? That's the question that will remain for the next, I don't know how long, but for a long time. Because this is the issue, we have a president who at times seems to be taking the decisions, but at other times he doesn't seem like he's the one that takes the decisions, the important decisions. This duplicity is something that is not resolved. My feeling is that Evo Morales is the real president of Bolivia, and that Arce is the Minister of Economics still. Everything tends to show that line of action. And see, the reason I mention this is because it is not happening like it happened in Ecuador, for example, where the vice president, that is presently the president, is very independent. Is very independent from Correa. Not only independent, he fought with Correa. He's his enemy right now. He denounced Correa's wrongdoings in government. So although this guy was his vice president, now that he's a president, it's undisputable that the president is independent from Mr. Correa, who was the leader of quote unquote, the revolutionary forces in Ecuador. It's not comparable. The situation is not comparable. In the Bolivian situation, Evo Morales shows that he still has the grip. He still has the handle of the sartén, and he's the leader. You know, he takes the final decisions. I think are in his hands. Even
uh,
yeah, go ahead.
A little anecdote just to complement that was that I was watching some things in the news this week, and in an interview that you probably, I think you watched No Mentiras. I don't really watch. I don't watch TV really, but anyway, he was asked, you know, what is that? Arce was asked in an interview, you know, straightforward question: is Áñez a de facto president or is she a constitutional president? And he tried to avoid the question, and they asked him again, and he responded, "She's the constitutional president." This is what he said before the elections, and it's clear as day. Before the elections, before he knew he was going to win, and now that once he got into office and beyond his initial speech, now he's pushing the rhetoric that was the de facto government and there was a coup d'état and you know he won, but he didn't start saying that. I don't think he started saying any of that. I'd have to go back and look at his acceptance, the speech when he took office. Is that he suddenly he's flip-flopped.
He changed.
And with Evo back in the country. And so
yeah.
Even during his
acceptance. You think that's Evo's influence, right?
I think so. And even during his acceptance speech, he was much softer. I don't recall in his acceptance speech, not when he officially took office, the night of the elections.
Right.
He was much softer in tone and wasn't pushing that. He talked about unifying and that he was going to govern for all Bolivians. And now, you know, he's officially in office and Evo is back, and his he's basically just towing the party line at this point.
Right.
So anyway, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to add that.
No, that's pretty good. I think that's an important piece of analysis. And to conclude this point, I don't think that in Bolivia there is a dispute of power. I don't think that Arce is disputing power with Morales. I think that Arce, I don't know if in an elegant way, but at least there is an acceptance for Morales. That the true leader in Bolivia, the guy that makes the big decisions, is. I think there's an acceptance in Arce. That the true leader in Bolivia is Evo Morales. Period. You know, and I think that he's not disputing that fact. It's a fact, I think. You know, but it's hard for people to digest that because we have a president, and he's a formal president. He appears vis-a-vis the media as the president of Bolivia. But if you want to know what's going to happen in Bolivia, I think you better go to the Chapare and ask Evo Morales what the direction is going to take in the elections of the departments with respect to the investigation of the Human Rights Commission. And if you want to know why the Constitutional Tribunal voted against the proposal of Comunidad Ciudadana, I think the answers to those big questions are more in the mind and in the words of Evo Morales than in the mind and in the words of Arce. I think that the political decisions I think are taken by Morales. But see, that's my theory on the basis of what I see and what I feel. But it's not an issue that ends today. It'll keep on going because then we'll see some decisions that are probably going to be taken by Arce. Especially the economic decisions are going to be taken by by him, and the tough ones, because there will be. I don't think right now, but I think sooner or later there will be tough decisions in the economic sphere, and I'm sure that Evo Morales will disagree with that, and he'll just be against the government, and those are going to be Arce's decisions. Let's see how this road continues. But it's an interesting line of analysis because in Bolivia we have never faced something like this. We never faced a president that shared power with somebody else. And in this occasion, we're doing it. And it's an interesting issue to analyze. I don't know if every week, but at least every time that is pertaining, it's good to do it. And
Sure.
it is pertaining this week because there are too many important issues that have taken place. For example, second issue that you put on the agenda is the decision by the Constitutional Tribunal to reject the proposal, to reject the demand, the suit that was instituted or presented by Comunidad Ciudadana. As you mentioned, that suit was about the 2/3 of the vote in the Senate. That was deleted by the mass as soon as they got to the Senate. They said, "Well, oh no, before
It was
they
their
even
last
yeah,
session
it was the last thing.
before they lost their
Right.
2/3.
Right. They changed the rules of the game. They changed the rules and they erased most of the decisions that were taken by 2/3 are no longer by 2/3. Only a couple of them or a few of them still stand, and those are the votes that are demanded by the Constitution of Bolivia. So that they couldn't change, but the rest of the decisions are not 2/3 or are simple majority. I was not surprised because I think this was a political mistake by Comunidad Ciudadana. They shouldn't have done this because now they have really closed the door in terms of in the future, near and far, ever to go back to the 2/3, because there is a pronouncement by a judiciary branch.
By the highest.
Yeah, by the
By the
highest
highest
court
authorities.
of land, exactly. You know that this is legal, and whenever somebody will make the intention to change this decision by the Constitutional Tribunal will come out and say, "Oh, but the Constitutional Tribunal said that this is legal, so why should we change the rules of the Senate?" And I think it was a bad move, absolutely bad move by Comunidad Ciudadana. They should have just left things as they were and fought them politically within the Senate in order to change this in the course of the next months or years, but never take them to the legal realm, because in the legal realm they did not have something where they sustained their demand, saying we think that 2/3 are important because such and such and such. No, it's not established in the Constitution. The Constitution establishes which votes are going to be 2/3. That hasn't been changed. The rules of functioning of the Senate established additional 2/3 votes, additional to what the Constitution states. That was good, but it wasn't demanded by the Constitution. So it's legal what they did, and that's why I think that Comunidad Ciudadana made a big mistake going to the tribunals for this, because they lost, and that's going to be a loss, I think, forever. I hope not, but I think forever, because there's a legal backing now in order not to change it in the future.
Right.
Number three, and I definitely think that was a move by, my feeling is that move was Evo's move. I just don't picture Arce doing all this maneuvering, and all the logic behind this, because one, Arce has never been in Congress, so he doesn't know how things are really
inner workings
take place there. Yeah. And I think that Evo does have that experience for many years.
Because
he was there. Yeah, he was a diputado, so he knows exactly what he's talking about, and he's used to manipulate Congress, manipulate the tribunals, manipulate everything. So my feeling is that he had a lot to do with this decision, and well, there it is. You mentioned the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. That's very important, Paul. For a small country like Bolivia, we need some external
watchdogging,
fiscalization in Bolivian politics. That's very important. And I would say this is the only one that we have. This is the only court. No, that's not the only court, but it's the most important court, in human rights that can rule over the Bolivian courts. Okay, that's very important because countries do decide, most countries in the world, except for the US, do decide that there are going to be international courts that will be on top of the local courts. Right. And this is the case. Yeah. I mentioned the US because the US never accepts any ruling from
Yeah,
foreign.
you mentioned it
Yeah.
before.
We talked about this, yeah. There are a couple of exceptions, but not too many. The only exception that I know of, or I can think of at this point, is the commercial rules by the United Nations. The U.S. abides those rules because it's commerce, it's business. But that's the only exception. All right, with this issue, we need the Commission of Human Rights to be looking at Bolivia the next 5 years, because the signals that we're getting from the Mas government is that they're not going to respect human rights, just like they did in the 14 years that they governed previous to Janine Áñez's government.
I guess my concern with it is, and I think the concern for many, is that they've been conspicuously absent during the human rights violations that did occur during Evo Morales' time in office. You know, with
this is true.
With what was the one in Sucre during the Constitutional Assembly? Sorry, I can't. La Calancha.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to start, that was probably the first big one, right?
Right.
Among others, El Caso Porvenir. You have him trampling the referendum of, you know, the 21
Caso Las
Febrero.
Américas.
The Hotel Las Américas. There's tons, numerous ones.
Tons. The two process of terrorism against the people of Santa Cruz.
If you look at the case, now correct me if I'm wrong, but there was the case presented refuting or against Evo Morales' supposed right to run for office as many times as he wanted because it was a human right. That was presented before this same commission, right? Or was it a different one?
No, this was presented to this commission. Yes.
And to this day,
and they never ruled.
So I think there is legitimate concern and even accusations that they don't act impartially. And that they you know, if I don't like to use general, but the easiest way to say this is if there's leftists in office, then they're going to they're going to look the other way. If there's claims made against a right-wing government, then they're going to be all over it. Which,
right?
If we're honest, it seems to be the case. You know, I guess we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. You know, with the deaths of the two gentlemen in Montero that were anti-Mas and, you know, killed by Mas protesters, and even there was a guerrilla, there was an ex-FARC participating in that same shootout, I guess you could say. I don't even call it a shootout because the ones that had the guns were the Mas on the Mas side. They're just kind of, you know, there's no attention being given to that. And this guy has even been put on house arrest. The guy that had been put in, he was in prison. I don't know if there's been any trial or anything like that. But anyway, the point, just reiterating that point, that it doesn't seem like they're impartial, you know, and what you're saying, I think, is true. A country like Bolivia, and especially, I'm not speaking well about the Áñez administration, but the MAS certainly doesn't have the best record in terms of his, you know, not abusing power and respecting human rights. That I hope they do their job and watch over things over the next 5 years at least.
No, you're right. This court has been signaled as a court from the leftist regimes, and that's probably true. But then again, it's the only thing that we have, and I think that still is valuable. And let's see what happens, because it's important for the people that are listening to us. It's important to point out that the International Human Rights Court is a court that is part of the Organization of the American States, or part of the OAS. On the other hand, this leftist governments, like the Venezuelan government, has felt in the past that the OAS has not done them any good. So they're not part of the court anymore. Venezuela is not part of this court. They've just left. Well, this is many years ago, yeah, because they felt that it wasn't good for them, that they were being investigated, and they left the court. Yeah, Venezuela is not part of the Inter-American Human Rights Court any longer, and this was a decision that was taken by Chavez many years ago. So they're well, dictators did that in the past. Fujimori did that too in the 90s, because he started doing a lot of bad things, and the Human Rights Court came in Peru, and then one day he said, we don't belong any longer to the Human Rights Commission. So they ended the relationship. Bolivia hasn't done that, because in part of what you say, because they received good treatment from the court. But that wasn't the case from Venezuela. Venezuela still left the court because they felt that they didn't need the international court supervising human rights respect in Venezuela. Let's see what happens in Bolivia. This is going to be tough. And I think that the court is going to have a hard time, because it's not easy to be partial. Just remember what happened. It's interesting to remember what happened this week. They had a hearing in La Paz, and in the hearing was the journalist, the lady journalist that had her house burned was present.
Casimira Lema.
Casimira Lema, and she was explaining what happened in her case, how her house was burnt by the mob, and she was giving the details. And the Masistas started screaming again, yelling against her in the midst of the hearing. So what is the court supposed to think here? That this woman is wrong, that this woman is the evil one, or is she the victim, And are the Masistas the good guys? Well, they're screaming at her again, So it's a difficult situation for the court. I know that they have a tilt in favor of the MAS, but I also understand that it's hard for them to be partial when they see so objectively these things, like what happened with Casimira Lema a couple of days ago. And I think that was just terrible what happened to her in the hearing, because she's a woman. She lost her house, she lost her patrimony, her family lost her home.
Yeah.
And then she goes to the hearing, and she's being attacked by all these people. This was just terrible. I don't think things like that happened even in the USSR during Stalin. I'm exaggerating, but it was just awful. Let's see. That's the chapter of the International Human Rights Court, the Inter-American Human Rights Court. I think it was good that you mentioned it, and it's good that you mentioned that it's a tilted court, but it still is a court, and it's still, we need it, even though it may not be the best place to be judged in, but it's the only place that we can be internationally looked upon in order for the preservation of human rights in Bolivia. The third that you mentioned is the letter. Yeah, the word coup was removed from the final version.
Good.
And yeah, it was good. I also think that that's it. There's not too much to comment about that. It was removed, and there was relief in the press and in the population as a whole, because it was awful that this wording was included there. And like you say, for a good number of people, there was no coup d'etat. For a good number of people, yes, there was a coup d'etat. But I don't think we'll ever get into an agreement on that point. I think that's for history to. I don't think history will take a decision, because it can't take a decision. This is the only instance that could take a decision of whether this was a coup d'etat or not would be a court of law. But there's no court of law to do that. Even if Congress says that this was a coup, Congress does not have the attribution or the right in order to determine whether this was a coup or not. Congress is a legislator. It's not a court of law. The only instance that could decide whether there was or not a coup d'etat would be a court of justice, and it doesn't exist. So it will never be clarified. There will be people that say that this was a coup, and others that it wasn't a coup, and that will go on forever, I think. So
it'll be interesting to see someday how it appears in the history books in school here.
Oh, yes, yes, in the history textbooks, yeah.
Mhm.
Right now, you know how it will appear, clearly.
Yes.
For the mass historians, this is a coup d'etat, and they're the one. My feeling, and it's interesting that you touched the point. In general, in Bolivia, the intellectuals, the writers, are leftists in general.
Mhm.
And now that you bring this point to the table, my feeling is that the books in the future will say that it was a coup, but let's see. Let's see. The most honest intellectuals will say that there was never an agreement on this, that these people said it was a coup, these guys were against the point of view. But yeah, like you say, some of them will say that it was a coup. And I think that in Bolivia, that the writers have usually been leftist people, and they have their version. So that's it. Elections. I think this is a good chapter.
Local
The
elections.
MAS won the election, the national election, widely. It was a good election for them.
Which has been the case
Because,
for the past 15 years.
yeah, but in this case, they won with 55%, and there were two elements that make a distinction here. One, the candidate was not Evo Morales, the candidate was Arce. So that has to be something to take into account. This is not just like past elections, because in the past elections, the leader, the natural leader of the movement was the candidate. In this case, no. So getting 55% under those circumstances, for me, well, under this one circumstance, considering this one circumstance, is important because it was somebody else, the candidate.
Right.
Number two, the second circumstances that make this triumph important is because the MAS had just fallen down from power. And they had fallen down because there was a lot of corruption and a lot of human rights violations. In a matter of 12 months, they were relieved by the people. They were no longer corrupt, and they were no longer violators of human rights. They won with 55% of the vote, despite the fact that they had fallen from government because of those two reasons. And this is basically because the Giannini government was so bad, because they were as corrupt as the Masistas were during 14 years. The Giannini proved that in 12 months, you can steal the same amount of money. I don't know if the same, but you can condense corruption in 12 months and be considered as bad as the other ones. And abusive, they were abusive. Yep.
Sure they were.
I think that Murillo is an example of a very abusive minister of government, and that's why he flew the country.
Yeah, Murillo and Quintana are they're the same.
They can compete. Yeah, they can compete. So pretty bad, but I think that's the second element that made the 55% possible. Somebody would argue that these were fraud elections. I don't know. Well, anybody can argue about fraud. Trump argues that there was fraud in the States. I don't think there was fraud in the States. I don't think there was too much fraud in Bolivia. There was any. I think that it was very legit, 55%. But now we go to the departmental elections. And this is going to be tough because of what you mentioned. The crucial point that you mentioned is that the MAS does not have majorities in the cities. And that's very important.
Just looking back, Mesa took like 60% over on a national level in the major cities.
Wow. See, that's tremendous point.
But what we look at now, we were talking about this before we went on, and sorry to cut you off, is that Comunidad Ciudadana doesn't, they've been, at least my perception, they've been very quiet so far. They don't seem to have any idea of strong candidates to present on a municipal or state level.
Yep. But let's do the exercise. First, in Santa Cruz, because this is where we both interact more and we live politics in Santa Cruz, local level. Maybe then we can mention La Paz, because I have a good feeling about what happens there, but I don't live there, so it's hard to gouge things like that. In Santa Cruz, I feel that the MAS, for the first time in its history, has two good candidates, if they're going to be the candidates. For the gubernatorial elections, they have this, the former mayor from Warnes, which is Cronenbold.
Yeah,
I think
Guaranes is the city, the next city over from Santa Cruz, basically. Small city,
That's correct. Yeah, it's very small.
for those
city.
that don't know.
But yeah, and see, that's very important that you mentioned that. It's not India. That's a province. Formally, it's a province,
Mhm.
but in real terms, it's not that far away. It's like in the U.S. talking about, I don't know, the outskirts of a city, and they have a different mayor, but it's still part of the urban area of
Mhm.
all big cities in the States have that. You know, they're big cities, but actually New York is just New York City. And New York City is the 5 boroughs. But come on, you cross the bridge and you're in New Jersey,
New Jersey.
and that's a different state, you know.
Yeah.
But it's basically the same urban area. It's the same philosophy and everything. Here, it's pretty much like that, you know. When you talk about a figure like Cronenbold, he's not a provincial leader. He's not like the leader in the provincia
Not at all.
Chiquitos, right? Yeah, not at all. He's a citizen of Santa Cruz de la Sierra, you know.
Mhm.
All practical
We
purposes, yeah.
we delivered pizza to him in his condominio, which
Right,
was
exactly. That's how
technically
urban.
belonged to Guaranes, but that's how close it was
Yeah,
to Santa Cruz.
and that what you just mentioned right now is probably the most important element to analyze here. He is, for all practical purposes, a Santa Cruz citizen from the urban area, and that makes him add votes to the hardcore votes from the mass, because I have the feeling that many people from the middle class in the city of Santa Cruz are going to vote in favor of him, although they are not masistas. And I give it for granted that many people that are, well, the masistas are going to vote for him. You know, that's a hardcore vote that is
Mhm.
never going to leave the mas, you know. And these are all the people that came from other departments to Santa Cruz, and that are the indigenous people that are living in Santa Cruz are basically masistas, and they will remain masistas no matter who the candidate for the governorship would be, no matter who. But in this case, you have a candidate that is, in addition to those guys, he's going to get a lot of the middle class vote in Santa Cruz de la Sierra,
Mhm.
which is the city. And I think that makes him a very strong candidate here, especially because the opposition to the MAS, I don't think that they have a very strong candidate. The strongest candidate they would get would be Camacho. I don't think Camacho is going to risk his life, his political life here, because he could lose against somebody like Cronenberg if he decides to be the candidate of the opposition, and that will be the end. That would be the end, you know, because all Camacho has been doing for the last 12 months is dropping.
Yeah,
you know,
every
peak,
time he opens his mouth, he's
his peak was in the 18th of November of last year, and of 2019. And from then on, you know, he has only been dropping points because he hasn't done anything positive. He hasn't gained any political leverage since last year. He's only losing. So, and now he has a girlfriend, you know. I think that's part of his strategy. But he has a girlfriend that is 20 or 25 years
that
younger
was
than
fast.
him.
20 or 25. He's not that old.
Yeah.
He's like my age.
Yeah, but the girl is the queen of the carnival, and this girls are never over 20. I mean,
Yeah,
they go around there. Yeah, and the guy is probably in his 40s. I don't know, 42, 43, but
he's right around there. Yeah.
Yeah, so the difference is very big, and he's thinking about girls at this point, because I don't know if he thinks that this will add him votes. Maybe that's what he thinks, but I don't know. The final results we'll see. But my take is that he's not going to candidate. He's not going to be a candidate, because if he is, he really runs the risk of losing against Cronenberg. And if he's not the candidate of his political party, or he's not the candidate of the opposition, then who is going to be if there's a unity candidate, who is going to be the unity candidate of the opposition? Tough. I don't see strong names. And I think that the opposition per se is very, very loose, is very weak at this point because
Mhm.
they've lost the national election and they're fighting among themselves, and they just don't see stronger. They don't seem strong even in Santa Cruz, which is the region of the main opposition to the MAS. I think they're pretty weak at this point, and I don't see a good candidate for the opposition. My feeling is that the MAS is going to have a very good showdown with Cronenbold as candidate. And also in the local elections, Santa Cruz de la Sierra, they will
And
have.
if we look at the, sorry,
Go ahead.
if you look at the results from the presidential elections, if you can use that as any kind of indicator, Camacho took like, he didn't get half. He got like, I think it was 45, 44, 45%, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Something, right?
In the city, right. In the city.
Only in the city, not in Santa Cruz on a state, because if we're talking about
Oh yeah, no, you're right. On the whole department, he got 45%. No, you're right. Yeah. On the department, he got 45%.
And Arce was second place. I think Arce had 35%.
Right.
And then Mesa was way down, had like 19 or 20. Which, of course,
he was the majority.
Yeah, I mean, if Camacho's not there, who else is going to be able to get 45% or more than that 35%? I would expect, again, like you said, whoever the candidate is, everybody can kind of agree that that's the MAS's voto duro, or their base vote, their base vote, right, is right around 35%, and I don't think that's going to change. And it would only go up depending on who the candidate is. Unless they have somebody like Border again,
so that's what makes it interesting. This election is going to be very interesting in Santa Cruz, because if the MAS wins in Santa Cruz, that's changing history, not only Santa Cruz history, but also the MAS's history, because the MAS has won before in Santa Cruz, but national elections. In 2014, the MAS won the national vote in Santa Cruz with Evo, but it never won a local election or a gubernatorial election. So this would be the first time in Santa Cruz, and that would be history again for the region and also for the MAS. Let's see what happens. It's going to be an interesting. I'm looking forward to that election. I'm even more interested in this election than in the national election, because in the presidential, it was pretty sure that the MAS was going to win. The surprise was that they won it in the first round.
So much.
That was yeah. But I think nobody in Bolivia said, "Hey, hold on, Mr. Mesa is going to win." No, that was just never in our minds. I think so, at least.
Definitely.
I think the people from Creemos thought that they were sustaining that Mr. Camacho was going to be in the election. I don't know if they were for real, but that was
I don't know anybody who wasn't genuinely concerned. I mean, in terms of if you weren't voting for the MAS, I don't know anybody who was. Again, like you just said, that's an excellent. That's to me, that's just being delusional, and I'm sorry to anybody who's listening that they're friends of mine. They really thought Camacho was going to win. But anyway.
But see, that's what makes this election interesting, because I don't think there's certainty of anything right now in Santa Cruz. I don't think anybody can say that the opposition is going to win the MAS. I think that's just, let's see what happens, And I don't think anybody can say that Mr. Cronenbold will win for sure, because, again, it would be the first time in history that would happen. So it ends up being a very interesting election. And again, it's Santa Cruz. It's not a little town. It's the biggest city in Bolivia. So that is going to be interesting. I think the MAS is going to put all its efforts to win this election. All the money that they can gather will be put in this election, I think, because they know that Santa Cruz, if they have the stronghold in Santa Cruz, that's it. Where's the opposition?
Anybody who doesn't know, Santa Cruz has something like 2 million votes, right?
Right.
On a national level.
Exactly.
Which is a fourth of the electorate on a national level.
Yeah, that's
and
but then the opposition would be in Tarija, I'm not talking a lot about Tarija, but
it's small.
That's it, Yeah, the opposition in Tarija, maybe, I don't know where else. yeah. It's not important. So the elections in Santa Cruz are going to be fascinating, I think, especially, well, both of them, the gubernatorial and also the mayoral.
So the mayoral elections, I see a similar tendency, or I'd like to think that way. In Santa Cruz, in the municipality, in the city, you've seen a government that has been very similar. It's like a miniature version of the MAS. They're not, in terms of abuse of power and corruption. It's nuts. I imagine Santa Cruz being run the way, like, I don't know, like the Chicago was in the 1920s during the Prohibition era or something. I mean, it's a mafia, and a lot of people, I think, are sick of it. At the same time, Santa Cruz is still like, it's still like a pueblo chico. There's still people who, they don't care how corrupt these people are. They're their friends, or they're their relatives, or this or that, and that people are willing to turn a blind eye, and because either it's because there's a personal tie to the people who are in those positions, or because I don't know. I'm sorry. I just I wonder if something's going to happen, because obviously Percy Fernandez isn't going to run again. The guy is, I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. You hope he doesn't, or does?
He doesn't.
Oh, doesn't. I don't think so.
But I heard some comments. I trust that he's not going to run, but I heard some comments in terms of he's already in good shape in his home.
Did you see in El Deber where I saw that the Deber headline? I thought I had to laugh at it. Did you see this? You probably saw the same article I did. I didn't read it, but it says Percy Fernandez is in good health or something like that. And the picture they used of him showed him sitting upright in a hospital bed with oxygen in his nose or something like that. I mean, and the guy's like 80 years old. He's but
old.
I can't see them trying to prop him up anymore. And I don't know if Angelica Sosa, who's the basically the interim mayor,
you're right. It doesn't seem logical. You're right. But I'll ask you a question.
I just think people are fed up with.
Yeah. But I'll ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Salvatierra. You're acquainted with her, right?
Adriana Salvatierra.
Adriana Salvatierra.
From the MAS.
Okay. Yeah. My feeling, I don't know what yours is. My feeling is that Adriana is a very good candidate too. Because again, she has all the masistas behind her. No matter who the candidate here will be, she'll get the masista vote.
Wasn't there just some meeting, and you probably can clarify this, where factions within the MAS were trying to expel her specifically and Carlos Romero from the party? Yeah, they didn't succeed, but I don't know how large a group that was within the party.
I don't know either, but they didn't.
Or how many of them were from Santa Cruz either? Because she's Cruceña. Go ahead. Sorry. Continue.
Those things are usually happen. I don't know if in this case it's true, but those things usually happen when elections are closed because there's somebody else that wants to be the candidate.
Okay.
And it tends to be that way. I don't know if this is the case, but I would imagine that I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. And under any circumstances, because even if it's true, it probably is true that some people wanted to get her out of the MAS. Even if it's true, how many people could there be? The mass of the MAS in Santa Cruz is big in the city, all the people from the markets, from the Plan 3000, from Villa Primero de Mayo, it's just an enormous population. I imagine that the people that wanted to kick her out of the MAS are no more than 100, because those are leaders, they're not the bases, they're the leaders that don't like her, that want her out because they want to substitute her or erase her from the political spectrum. But the big populace of the mass in Santa Cruz de la Sierra is there. They'll vote for her or whoever the candidate is. It doesn't matter to them. I don't know what the percentage in Santa Cruz de la Sierra are Masistas, but that's a absolutely sure vote that they'll have. But to that, you know, I think that Adriana adds a middle class. My feeling is that in order to be a little clearer of what I mean is when we talk about the middle class that could vote for Adriana, I'm talking about the middle class, in order to be clearer, not the middle class that is with Creemos or the middle class that is with Demócratas, okay? Because I think the middle class has decided it's against mass, period, you know? But I think there's a middle class that votes for Comunidad Ciudadana, which are cruceños, of course, they live here. And the people that are Comunidad Ciudadana in Santa Cruz de la Sierra are not masistas, and they're definitely not from the ultra right of Santa Cruz, the Comité Cívicos.
Centrists.
Yes, no, they're centrists, you know. My feeling is that they're closest to the mass than to the radical right in Santa Cruz. The radical right in Santa Cruz have the magic to be detestable because they're racist and everything else, you know. And I think that the people that voted for Comunidad Ciudadana are not racist, basically, you know. They're just people that want to be in the middle. But if they have to choose between a declared racist from the Ku Klux Klan Bolivian version and they have a person like Adriana Salvatierra, I would tend to think that they would vote for somebody like Adriana. And that makes her a very interesting candidate. Again, just it's the same case as Mr. What's his name? Cronenberg. Yeah. Of course, well, that's a personal position, you know. I think Adriana is much better than Cronenberg in every way that there is, you know, because Adriana is as a politician that has been educated to be a politician. You know, she went to school, she studied politics, she was in Congress, which is, I'm not disrespecting people that are in the mayor office, in the municipal office in Juarez, but it's like in the US, you know, if you're the mayor of Fulton, Missouri, which is where I went to college, you know, that doesn't make you a national politician. You know, the mayor from Fulton is just the mayor from Fulton. You know, he understands.
But there's a difference with Cronenberg because there's a big difference between Fulton, Missouri, and let's say St. Paul next to Minneapolis. I mean, it's right next door.
True. We talked about this,
and also Cronenberg isn't the mayor or wasn't the mayor. He hasn't been reinstated. He lost his. Anyway, he was mayor. Because he wanted to be the mayor of Juarez and represent Juarez, and he identified, but he was an opportunist looking for the closest thing to Santa Cruz, and they would keep him in the.
Which is not the case of Adrián.
You know, if he was the mayor of San Ignacio de Velasco or something, that wouldn't get him anywhere.
I understand your point in terms of being the mayor of Fulton is not the same as being the mayor of Juarez in terms of that you're part of a big city or urban area. No, that's correct, and we mentioned it. And when I made the point before, I made it in favor of him because he was a mayor in the con-urban area of Santa Cruz, and I think that makes him palatable to the middle class in Santa Cruz. I still think that that's the case of Cronenberg. But when you compare Cronenberg with Salvatierra as persons, I just think there's a big difference, you know, a big distance, because even though Cronenberg it could be a symbol for the middle class, he's just too primate in political terms, you know. Adriana is more sophisticated. She has an education. She has a better discourse. She has political ideas, I think, much clearer than Cronenberg. I just think she's by far better than Cronenberg. But both have interesting positions in the next election. And I think also if she wins the election in the city, she'll be again the first MAS person that has won an election in Santa Cruz, and it'll be the first time that somebody from the MAS is elected here.
Mhm.
But I end up with this, my commentary, in order for you to opine after what you think
Okay.
about this. Given this, which is, I'm sure that I'm not the only one thinking like this. You know, there are probably many people that are thinking, because it's almost obvious. You know, who can be a good candidate against her? Okay, if I
As
go name by name, will Mrs.
Sosa.
Sosa be a good rival of Adriana? I don't think so. I think Adriana could eat her without cooking, you know, because definitely, you know. Who is another one? Oh, I don't know, but there's a voice that says that Ruben Costa will go again, that will be a mayoral candidate. He's a good candidate.
I think you
that
would be. I think you'd beat her, no problem.
Yeah, I think he would beat her too. But I don't know if no problem, but I think that he would beat her. Yeah. I think close, but he's the best one. He's the best one. Other than that, I don't think there would be a good one, you know. Because the other ones are just from a lower categories, you know, of politicians. If Ruben goes, then that's serious stuff. If Ruben doesn't go for any reason, I think they would go and straighten Fernandez's body and show him around and make him the candidate.
Like
yeah,
Weekend at
because Percy is a good candidate, even if he's 90. You know, I think he's a legend here.
But he's just he's disappeared completely from the public.
Yeah,
because I think he's so, and my suspicion is that he's just so decrepit at this. He's not physically or mentally in any shape to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think
that,
you know,
that
I think
leaves,
people almost. I think there's a huge percentage of people here in Santa Cruz that just feel bad for the guy because they're using him at this point, and everybody knows it. It's shameful. Sorry. So what I guess what was your conclusion, that it leaves?
That leaves Ruben Costas.
Costas.
And I think that would be the only guy that could beat Adriana in good terms and or have a better chance to do it. Let's see what happens. But he's a damn good candidate for the mayor's office in Santa Cruz. Ruben.
Yeah.
It would have to be a sole candidate from the opposition, though, in order to beat Salvatierra. In both cases, they need.
Yeah, I don't know which other candidates would take any. I guess my response is on a departmental level, and we talked about the possible candidates, the non-MAS candidates that have been mentioned. Somebody, I think I heard this on Valverde, that somebody wanted Angelica Sosa to run for governor, which I think would be worse than running for mayor. I just don't see any logic in that. With the other guys from Demócratas that are Aguilera and Rolly Aguilera and Vladimir Peña, again, they're nobody, you know. Ruben Costas is almost like the Santa Cruz's version of Evo Morales. He's this like a lifelong figurehead of, and the difference, Ruben Costas has been able to have a pretty reasonable run, a successful run as governor without tons of scandal and corruption. I mean, and a lot of people criticize him because they say, oh, where was Ruben Costas for this, or where was he for that? He's not, at least if we look past the Cabildo de un Millón you know, in the past 10 years, let's say, I think he's focused on gestión, on getting the job done, and not so much it being a politician that's looking to take the limelight, which is respectable. But anyway, I think the point I'm trying to make is that he's kind of the only one, you know, and that's why we're having a hard time coming up with viable options or anybody who could run against the MAS candidate, and that's hard to do because these other guys, Aguilera and Peña, are just, you know, other guys that are lower ranked that within the governor or within the state government, that nobody really knows who they are. And besides the guys that are, I said this before we recorded, they're just the guys standing next to Ruben Costas when he gives a public statement, right? And
Right.
I don't know what other, you know, how they would fare in a campaign, especially one that's coming up and so soon. On a municipal level, I think Costas, as you said, it can win hands down because he's still very respected. He's still, I think people are tired of the rampant corruption at the municipal level. And maybe, you know, I think I said this on a previous show, when you look at least locally here in Santa Cruz, if we look at municipal, departmental, and then national government, the one that wins hands down in terms of being the least corrupt, and not to say that there's no corruption, but the most serious and most effective in doing their job and least corrupt is the government at a departmental level. And I think most people are very conscious of that. I don't know if you'd agree, but that's the way I perceive things. So he'd have a pretty fair shot. Again, if you said if it's not unified, that he'd have a much harder time if he runs against Salvatierra, if those are the two main candidates. I'm trying to remember the previous elections and who else was running. There was Gary Prado. I voted for Prado.
Oh, okay.
Fernandez? Did Johnny Fernandez run?
Oh, yeah.
Or Roberto Fernandez might have.
And he pretends to do it again, Johnny.
Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna, because he's just gonna lose again.
But he did mention that he's going to run despite whatever. Yep. He did say that.
I just see them being like,
there's a new guy. The new guy is Gary Añez.
Yeah, but
he's been on TV the last 3 days intensively. And in his show, in the radio show, man, he's intensive. He has all these people calling him. I don't know if he tells them to call, but a bunch of people call.
I've even seen his videos have gone viral in like WhatsApp groups and stuff, and on Facebook. He's become very vocal in that you know, I guess in the political realm. Most people know him as a sports commentator, but I guess I don't know how I feel about that. I can't see him doing well or taking enough of the vote. You know, I just can't. If Costas is in the ring, me personally, the people I know, I can't see anybody voting for either the people who would vote for I can't see him taking votes away from Ruben Costas. I really can't.
But see, what we'll need in Santa Cruz is there has to be unity between the group of Ruben and the group of Camacho. If there's no unity between those two groups, they're going to have two separate candidates for each one of the posts. There are going to be two candidates for mayor and two candidates for governor by each one of those groups of politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I think we're in agreement that for the governorship, the opposition, the non-mas is going to have a harder time. But at a municipal level, I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case.
On the municipal level, if Ruben Costas is the candidate, they have a very strong candidacy there, and maybe they'll win, as you say. In the departmental level, they don't have a good candidate, but I cannot think of anybody else that wouldn't be Camacho, because I think Camacho, despite all his problems, and he has many problems, I think he would lose against Cronenbold. But I think Camacho is better than the rest, because he's been doing a lot of gymnastics lately. You know, he's been in politics, he's been in national politics, he's been in the media, people know him, and the far right considers him a hero. And I think that if you consider the other candidates, he's stronger. I don't know if he would be stronger than the senator from his party, the guy that was in jail for 10 years, Matkovic. Yeah, I don't know if he'd be, because I think Matkovic would also be a strong candidate from the right. I don't know which one is stronger. My feeling is that
Matkovic is more affable and more.
Yes.
Here's the thing with Cronenbold and what he's got. One of the things that makes Cronenbold a strong candidate is he's very likable. He's got charisma. He's everybody's friend, right? Yeah. And so that goes a long way. Camacho
Well,
is the polar opposite. It's really hard to look at Camacho and say, "This is a nice guy. I like this guy." He doesn't have that
no, he doesn't have
at all.
that at all. Yeah, and you know, we haven't mentioned it, but it's important. Cronenbold is Cronenbold. Okay, that plays a role in Latin America, and especially in Bolivia, and especially in Santa Cruz. It's a German last name. You know, he's white, man, and that's oh yes.
I'm going to tell you a quick anecdote.
Uh-huh.
Before we go, I was going to mention this earlier. I was at the airport the other day doing a trámite in Aduana, in the customs, and and the lady in front of me was also waiting. She says, I don't know what we're talking about. We started chatting, right? And this lady was like I don't want to say typical, it sounds bad, but you know, older, white, cruceña, right?
Okay.
And I remember she says her name was something and something Cronenbold. And she says, and she told me that she says, Mario Cronenbold, he's my, I don't remember what relationship, but they were relatives. And she's like, he is a crook, and not just a crook, he's a huge crook. And she tore the guy to pieces. I'm related to him and he's my relative, but that guy is and you know, I wasn't even asking her opinion, man. So the point being, he's got that European last name, which in Santa Cruz, a lot of people seem to like that, but Jesus, his own family doesn't even accept him. But anyway.
I don't know. Maybe his family, families never back up politicians from their own family because there's too much envy within the family. But my feeling is that many people do have that propensity to value more a last name that is definitely European than a local one. You know, I think it's hateful what I'm going to say, but it's part of the analysis. You know, I think in Santa Cruz, the last name Cronenbold weighs much more than the last name Camacho, for example, you know, or Salvatierra.
What if we get Vladimir Peña? At least his first name is.
No, it doesn't count because
it has to be the last name.
No,
I was just kind of making a joke.
It has to be the last name, of course. It's like Evo Morales, you know. Well, that's a whole different chapter. Maybe we should sometime explore that. But he's Morales, you know. I don't know how he would be, how palatable he would be if he would be Quispe, for example, which is different, you know. But that's something to be analyzed. It's not that superficial, you know. He is Morales.
It's true.
Yeah, you know that indigenous people changed their last names because it was better. Well, that was explained in different by different people, you know. Cárdenas used to explain that, you know. Victor Hugo, he used to explain it, you know, because they asked him, why are you Cárdenas? And he said, oh, of course, it's simple, you know, because my grandfather or whoever, you know, felt that it was easier in life to be Cárdenas than be whatever.
Same thing happened in the States with a lot of
course.
With a lot of with the slaves and even with slaves, the African Americans. Yeah, so, interesting. Well, I think that's a good place.
Morales is Morales, man. That's a point against for him, you know. He's Evo Morales. He's not Evo whatever, you know. It's all these little things make politics so interesting and so important to you. You know, because my feeling is that now that we're talking about Santa Cruz, you have a Cronenbold is going to be a candidate, and I think that is, I don't know how much importance, but I think it is important. It's not like another neighbor of Santa Cruz.
Yeah,
let's see. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is probably a good place to leave off for today.
Yeah, definitely. We've covered every point that was.
Yes, we
mentioned.
have.
Yep.
I had a good time. Thanks.
So did I.
Thanks.
Definitely.
And I guess we'll see everybody next week. Enjoy your weekend.
All right. Yep. You too. Enjoy it. It's very hot, but we'll still try to enjoy it because it's too warm. Yeah. I'm making the effort, but still, I get very tired of points.
You're not alone.
Yep. Well, have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.